the most awaited event of the year 2020. the most awaited event of the year 2020.
Saravan sir, நம்ம principal sir வந்து join பண்றேன்னு இருக்காரு. ஒரு 2 minutes wait பண்ணுங்க.
Already I am on the line.
Sir, yes sir. Good morning sir. Good morning sir.
Good morning madam. Good morning to all of you.
Sir இருக்காருன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். மகேந்திர சேகரன் sir.
Hello. வணக்கம்.
Vanakkam sir, I am Principal of SNS College of Technology. Extend a warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
I also extend a warm welcome to all the participants and all the people those who are attending this seminar. On behalf of the group of SNS Group and SNS College of Technology, I extend a warm welcome to all the members, delegates and attendees and the resource person for the webinar. All the best. Please kindly start, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll give the introduction about our chief guest before sir starts the session. To the participants, I give the introduction about our chief guest, Mahendra Sekaran. Sir, he's an executive director. Mahendra Sekaran sir is an executive director, intelligent communication, collaboration at Microsoft. He leads the product management and operation teams for real-time communication service in Office 365. Mahendra sir has 25 years of experience in the communication domain, and his team is responsible for strategy, planning, defining, prioritizing, operating, coordinating the infrastructure, engineering investments that supports the Skype and Microsoft Teams. And I welcome you, sir, and I thank you for accepting our invitation to come over here and to start the session. The session is yours, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kalai. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mahendra Sekaran. I'm thankful to have the opportunity to talk to you all about this topic, which is very near and dear to my heart. Just like Dr. Kalai said in the introduction, like my whole work career has been revolved around the communications domain. So what I'll do is in the next 45 minutes, I will kind of give you a little bit of overview of how the communications industry is transforming and how workplace productivity is kind of changing. And I will use Microsoft Teams as a product to kind of describe it because that's the product that I kind of work on very closely on a day-to-day basis. And I will draw some comparisons to other products that you're probably familiar with as well, if you're not familiar with Microsoft Teams. So you kind of understand the technology and the supporting services that are needed for any kind of communication software. Okay. So with that, let me start off by telling a little bit about myself. I was born in Tuticorin because my mother is from Tuticorin. And then I grew up in Madras pretty much my whole adult life. I went to a school called Asan Memorial, which is in Egmore. And I did my undergrad in a college called IRTT. I think some of you who are from the Coimbatore area may be familiar with it, or maybe not. So it's the Institute of Road and Transport Technology, and my friend that I've known since then is actually Dr. Kalai's friend, and that's how I got introduced and got this opportunity to talk to you all. And then I came to the US in 93 or 92, somewhere in there, to do my master's in computer science. And the area of specialization I had was in distributed AI. And then I started my career at a company called Nortel. Nortel is pretty much a telecommunications equipment manufacturing company. So I was a developer and I kind of grew to be a dev manager, working on core technologies for cellular networks. So on your mobile device, when you place a call, it is actually going through a set of infrastructure that's owned by the carriers, whether it's BSNL or Jio or Airtel. They have infrastructure in their network, which the call gets routed to before it gets connected to the other party. So I worked on a lot of the software on the mobile cores. So for location services, the ability to find your location dynamically is a technology that I kind of built, a while ago. And 15 years ago, I joined Microsoft, and I've had different roles there. And I currently lead the product management and operations teams for all the infrastructure and services and core technology that powers products like Microsoft Teams and Skype. With that, let me just kind of start off by kind of sharing with you a little bit about how the telecommunication space has evolved over the past 40 years. I'll go kind of left to right, and then we'll just kind of touch on a few topics here. One is, if you look at the systems, this is I don't want to go to the 1800s or 1900s when people use like pigeons and smoke signals to communicate. From there, technology kind of evolved to telegrams, and then the telephone was invented. But the early telephone systems were very manual systems. There were operators kind of sitting in switchboards who were connecting the wires to allow circuits to be connected. And the architectures were very kind of monolithic architecture. So what I mean by that is they were very proprietary systems, and the systems used to be very, very large systems that occupied several thousand square feet for calls to be made. And over time, like the world today is like, you must hear that, everything is getting virtualized, everything is getting cloudified. The future of computing is in the cloud, which is kind of why even the systems are evolving to virtualized systems so they can run on any kind of cloud infrastructure. So that's on the extreme left, on the systems part. And if you think about the modality, at least when I was growing up, and I'm probably dating myself here in terms of age, voice was a primary form of communication, right? I mean, so if I had to talk to when I was in my college, when I talked to my dad, I used to have to, there's one phone somewhere in the middle of the hall in the hostel, and I used to place a call. And voice is the only form of communication. And then, email was always there. And then slowly on mobile, as mobile started taking off, in the mid to late 90s and into the 2000s, text messaging started becoming more popular. And recently with 3G and 4G and with 5G systems coming in, data has started becoming more ubiquitous. And so, people do not browse anymore. People basically connect with the internet using apps that are very purpose-built. And if you look at the mobile technology, the way it's evolved, like in the 80s, mobile phones used to have to carry in a little suitcase, and they were very, very expensive. I still remember my first cell phone in 1996. It was a pretty bulky device, and all it could do was, call and text. There was no thing as data and all that stuff at that point. And then 2G started kind of evolving, and as 3G took off, data started becoming more ubiquitous. And then the iPhone came about in 2007, I believe, and that truly transformed, the mobile experience. Today, I think some of you probably who are younger and still in college probably don't even know what a regular old cell phone used to look like. And even people, like when we say, hey, we're the dial tone, a lot of you may not even have heard of a dial tone or heard the dial tone because you're used to mobile devices where this concept of dial tone does not exist. So technology has transformed very quickly. And if you look at in terms of how things have evolved on the analytics side, the older systems are very proprietary closed systems, and they started having data like just kind of for just the operator to kind of have knowledge of. But as we go forward, the insights you get from people's communication, the insights you get from who they're talking to, has driven a lot of analytics, and it kind of allows these systems to morph to become more intelligent, because intelligence needs data, and when you have large amounts of data, you need a very intelligent system to process it. So as you can see, the industry has transformed, and the pervasiveness of mobile and the ubiquity of data connectivity is tremendously transforming the communications and collaboration landscape. So like we are part of a revolution here, and I feel fortunate to have been involved in a lot of these technologies as they grow and contributing to it as well. The workplace is also changing. This is a slide that we put together probably 6 months ago, 9 months ago, and the period we live in today with COVID-19 and the lockdowns and the work from home is different. But mobile is basically 45% of people use social tools at work. Like in India, probably a lot of people use WhatsApp at work. People probably use Facebook at work. But as enterprises become more sensitive about their data and their privacy, those things start becoming a concern. The number of devices in the past, there used to be probably one device per family, but now if you take your laptop, your tablet, your mobile device, and your other IoT smart devices that you have connected, your smart speakers, people have the number of devices per user has also multiplied. The workplace has become much more diverse, and it's a very global workplace. At any particular time, there's probably 4 to 5 generations that's together in the workforce. And everybody's got their own style of working. So you need the technologies that are available in the workplace to evolve along with the generations as well. The next stat is kind of interesting. This was something, like I said, this slide is probably a year old or maybe 9 months old, where 72% of workers will be working remotely was the forecast. This is not 100% working remotely, but they will be conducting some part of their work remotely. Today and over the last 3 months, I think majority of us, maybe 100% of us, are working remotely. I've been remote for the past 3 months, but the productivity has not really dropped significantly, which is quite amazing in terms of what the technology allows us to do. And in general, even in the workplace, the culture has evolved to be a lot more collaborative. There's a lot more team-based projects. There's a lot more work that, it's not where you just sit down and you do your work on your own. There are times where you have to do that. But in general, work happens within the context of a team. So you need a piece of software or a technology that basically allows you to collaborate very effectively with your team and be able to have the right communication modalities. With that, I don't want to turn this talk into, all about Microsoft Teams, because that's what I work on. Let me tell you what Teams is, and then I will kind of draw some comparisons, right? So I think some of you may have used Zoom, some of you may have used WebEx. Microsoft Teams is, one of the most successful products for enterprise communications collaboration. We shared some public numbers where we have over 200 million daily participants in meetings, and we have over 4 billion minutes of day that's running through our clients and services on a daily basis. So we feel incredibly proud and humbled to have the opportunity to kind of keep the world productive during this period of crisis, where people are having to stay at home and obey all the lockdown orders. So with that, this is what Microsoft Teams is. It is the hub for teamwork in Microsoft 365. If you don't know what Microsoft 365 is, it is the suite of productivity applications in Microsoft. So the common applications that you're used to, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, SharePoint, all of these together are packaged into a suite that we call Microsoft 365. Okay, so in terms of modalities that we support in Teams, again, to adapt to the changing workplace. We have chat-based communication. We have this notion of teams and channels where you can have multiple teams. And within teams, you can have multiple channels. So you can actually have different collaboration spaces for different tasks. So if you're a set of students, you could all be part of one team. And depending on what class you're doing, they can be channels. And within channels, you can have specific projects that are happening in specific chat threads. So, and within this, within the context of Teams, you can share files, co-author files, and do a lot of other things that you would normally do. Today, where if you're working on a document, you want to share this with somebody, you might have to email this to somebody, and then they have to send it back to you. So this kind of brings all of this together into one collaborative workspace. That's what Microsoft Teams allows you to do. Just like products like Zoom and WebEx, we also support a very rich capability for online meetings and hosting live events. I was quite happy that when Dr. Kalai scheduled this webinar, I'm actually using Teams to be sharing my content and my audio and video. So it's a great use of our product, which I'm actually happy to see. We also support all the kind of core enterprise calling and voice capabilities. What we mean by that is, companies have phone numbers, like where they have business numbers. Today, those business numbers are traditionally served by like a PBX system or something that they deploy, on their enterprise. But with Teams, you really don't have to deploy a PBX. We can actually host your phone numbers in the Microsoft Cloud. And when somebody calls you, we can deliver the call to your Teams client. We also have a set of Teams phones that, just like your regular phones sit on your desk, you can actually put those phones on your desk as well. So we support the full suite of business calling that customers expect from us. Besides kind of chat, meetings and calling, we also offer very rich integrations into, all the other Office 365 applications. And we also have a framework, which I'll talk about the next slide in terms of extending Teams. And the same experience will be available on is available on your PC, it's available on the browser, it's available on your mobile devices, whether it's Android or iOS, it doesn't really matter. So we have a true cross-platform solution. And then, this is the extensively I was talking about, if you're a company that does, say, architecture, and you want to integrate like some software that you use for visualizing your, blueprints and stuff like that. Although Teams doesn't support native blueprints capabilities, you can actually take the app that does blueprints and add it as a tab into Teams, so that while you're chatting with people, you can also extend it to use other applications that are part of our App Store. This is the biggest promise that we have with Office 365. The reason there's over 250 million users that use Microsoft 365 on a monthly basis is because they trust Microsoft to actually handle the data, securely, and meeting all the compliance requirements they have, and and the privacy requirements that customers expect from us. We don't, in any form, try to monetize the data that flows through our cloud and our systems. This is all about, just focusing on the core Microsoft mission of empowering our customers to do more. And all these services that we offer in Office 365 are compliant to a very, very strict regulatory standards that exist around the world. So you may not be familiar, like HIPAA is like a huge privacy law that's in the US. There are similar laws in India as well that we are compliant to. So as we offer our products in different markets, we make sure that we meet the regulatory and compliance requirements that exist in the different geographies in the world. All right, so this is, I don't want you to think that, hey, this is a big pitch on Microsoft Teams. I'm not here to sell you Microsoft Teams. My intent is to more kind of share with you how this technology works. So when you hear the terms cloud service, cloud computing, you are able to kind of have a better understanding of how things work. Okay. So, the way Microsoft Teams works is it has a distributed microservice architecture. What I mean by that is, we don't write one big kind of service. that supports all the capabilities I just talked about in the previous slides. We have a very distributed each of these capabilities, whether it's chat or calling or meetings or call recording or live events, they're all their own independent microservice. And the reason we do that is we want these microservices to kind of evolve at their own pace and have a separation of concerns with each other. So if the chat service wants to do a capability, they can do this on their own cadence. Like the calling services can do this on their own cadence. It helps with engineering agility. If you just have one single service that's supporting all these capabilities, every time you roll out a change or every time you make a change, you had to make sure the change not, cause any regression in all the functionality. The validation matrix is going to be very complex. So microservices architecture allows you to have better separation of concerns. And in the cloud services world, the microservices architecture has proven to be one of the more successful frameworks. And like if you look at companies like Amazon, Google, all of them kind of use microservices architecture. And Microsoft Teams runs on a distributed, like I said, a set of microservices, and they run on the Microsoft Cloud Platform, which is Azure. This network is a global network, and it has 44 regions across the world. And we have like hundreds of edge sites. By edge sites, what I mean is like, if you're in India, we have data centers in India in multiple locations. But we partner with a lot of the ISPs in India so that when you are placing a call from Teams or you're trying to access like a Office 365 IP address, we can quickly hop on from your ISP network into our backbone. And our backbone is like an over-provisioned backbone, and it's built for high performance. And you can get into the managed network, and you're not vulnerable to the fluctuations that the internet might typically have. And like I touched on earlier, our cloud is compliant across hundreds of standards. And the miles over here, this number is probably much longer now, but we have our own kind of private fiber network. We own our own kind of undersea cables across Asia and North America and Europe. And our goal is to basically reach the, I think now the number is higher now, like 70 to 80% of the GDP of the world within 25 milliseconds. And we continue to make it better. And during COVID-19, we actually grew our network capacity in magnitudes because we saw a huge surge in usage, because as you can imagine, you probably were in class at this time, if it was regular time. The fact that you're sitting at home and watching this webinar either on the live stream or joining on Teams, you're putting that much more demand on the ISP backbones and on all the other network backbones. So the networks continue to grow, and we continuously monitor the usage and performance of our global network and continue to add capabilities to it as we go. So this is like a very high-level slide of how things work. I do not want to go into a lot of detail in terms of describing this architecture. This is a very, very simplified view, so you understand conceptually how IP-based communications work. On the left is like I just have, this is the Teams client logo, and this you can replace this. I would suspect the same model works for Zoom, for WebEx, pretty much any kind of cloud-based communications platform. It follows a very similar architecture. Well, I shouldn't call it architecture. The framework is very similar across, any kind of cloud service. So you have your endpoints that are connected through the internet to a cloud, and in this case, it's the Microsoft Cloud. And there's multiple services that's running in the cloud. We have what we call Azure Active Directory. This is our authentication directory on who are the valid users. When you sign in, here's where we validate the credentials. And then we have a variety of like web service roles. We have like media roles, we have signaling roles, and we have a bunch of data stores so that we can capture data as things progress through our system. And from our Microsoft Cloud, so what PSTN stands for is Public Switch Telephony Network. So we have partnerships with telco providers around the world, and we actually connect with them. And most of these PSTN providers, the protocol that we use to connect with them is a protocol called Session Initiation Protocol. You refer to it as SIP. Because that's the IP-based protocol that is used in pretty much all the telco backbones when they are supporting voice over IP. And then you have your mobile device that's connected into these networks. So the PSTN, I just drew as a single cloud. It can have wireless providers, fixed line providers. It doesn't really matter. All of them interconnect to our cloud using the SIP protocol. So on your mobile device, when you power on your phone, so if you're an Airtel subscriber, you're updating your location, you're registering with the Airtel network. So the Airtel network knows when somebody calls your number or how to reach you, right? So they set up a signaling channel from your mobile device into their network. And that's how when somebody calls you, calls come to you. So the next couple of slides, I'll just kind of walk you through if I'm sitting on a Teams client and say I'm calling Mr. Saravanan on his mobile number in India, he's in Coimbatore, and I'm in Seattle, Washington, and say I need to call his number. I'll walk you through, like a high-level view of the steps that we kind of go through to kind of give you an order of, idea about all the systems that come into play and how rapidly this happens, right? The first thing is, when I sign into my Teams client, I'm authenticating myself with the Microsoft Cloud. I get a token, and this token is kept on my client. And then I say I go to my calling tab and I dial Mr. Saravanan's number. What happens is, this is like, this is not the actual syntax. I'm just giving semantically, there's a call request that goes from our client into like a calling signaling service that sits in our cloud. In that make call request, my mobile device or my desktop, my laptop that I'm making my call from will basically, before I place the call, there's a media stack that's running on the device, on the application, that will query my machine, the operating system, to allocate a specific port and a request for IP. It'll get the IP of my machine and send that in the make call request. So my source IP, my port, what codec that I use. A codec is basically the way your voice is encoded digitally is called a codec. So there's multiple codecs, and different codecs have different behaviors. Some codecs are adaptive, some codecs are fixed bitrate. So we support both fixed bitrate and adaptive bitrate codecs. What I mean by adaptive bitrate is, if the network conditions, you could start with a video call with like 2.5 megabits per second, but if your network starts dropping in terms of available bandwidth, we automatically adapt our bitrate to a lower bitrate so that we can still provide a good experience without powering the network. So all this information is sent in the make call request, and that make call hits our cloud, and then we realize that, hey, this phone number doesn't belong to any of our Teams users. It belongs to somebody in the PSTN network. So we determine which PSTN partner we route the call to. In this case, let's say we pick a partner in the US. Say, let's say we will, since I'm calling from the US, the call will egress into our US telco partner. Once it hits their network, they look at the number, they'll see it's a +91 some number. They know +91 is the India country code. So they route the call over to inter-exchange carrier that is responsible for international long distance in the telco network, and it'll land in some inter-exchange carrier, most likely in Bombay. When the call lands in Bombay, when they look at the number, say it's +91 9844 some number, they realize that number belongs to Airtel. They route the call to Airtel. Airtel knows that since Mr. Saravanan has powered on his phone, they know which MSC or VLR he's located at. The call gets routed to the local switch in Coimbatore. From Coimbatore, the call will be delivered to his mobile device. His phone starts ringing, and once he answers the call, his answer will come to the PSTN network. The PSTN network doesn't have any information about IP and everything else like that, right? Because his mobile device, as far as mobile device is concerned, it's a regular cellular call. So he's not going to give me back an IP address. However, there's an element that sits on the edge of the PSTN network, which is called a session border controller. That will basically deliver its own IP address because it knows when media packets come to it, how to transcode that and send it to the mobile device. So it'll send its own IP address, the port, and the codec. And then that gets sent over in step number 7 back to my Teams client. And then there's a few other things that happen, actually several other things that happen here. I'm just removing for simplicity, and the media path gets established. So I call Mr. Saravanan, he answers, the call gets set up, and once I talk, my audio gets converted by my audio driver on my mobile device into kind of digitized packets. And this digitized packets are transiting through the internet, through the Microsoft Cloud, and then they eventually again get transcoded into PCM signals to be delivered on the mobile device. So this is the anatomy of a call. And there's a lot more detail here, but hopefully you get the idea and the complexities. There's like 3 different protocol conversions that happen here. The protocol between our client and our cloud is RESTful HTTP APIs. The protocol between the Microsoft Cloud and the PSTN Cloud is SIP. And between the PSTN Cloud, it goes through multiple networks before it reaches his carrier. And there it is whatever the carrier protocol is, usually, there's like protocols that is defined in the 3GPP standards that identify the mobile protocols that I used. So, and all this happens in a matter of seconds. When he talks, his voice gets encoded and sent along this whole path, and it reaches me within like 200 milliseconds. And that is the power of communication, and that's the power of IP. The beauty of IP is once I have a call, I can easily add video, I can do screen sharing, I can send images during the call. And all of this is not, very easily possible on a regular cellular call. And which is why I kind of believe strongly that the future of communications is on IP, and you can build so much intelligence and experiences around it that, things can only become better. Right? Just doing a quick time check. I think we're a little bit over time, but I'll kind of quickly rush through this. So what does it take to, I'm not going to talk about all of this, what does it take for us to run a cloud service, right? Like I said, we run, it's a cross-platform architecture. We have distributed microservices. Anytime we roll out changes, we do things called, we have very rich telemetry that's coming from all our clients and services. So anytime we roll out a feature, we know exactly how the users are using that feature. So when we roll out a new feature, we actually do something called experimentation. So we will roll this out to just like, 1% of population. Say we're rolling out a new feature for iPhone. We can actually target through our experimentation systems that, hey, I want to roll this capability or this feature flag just to like 5% of users in India. And then I will see their usage and telemetry and see how they're using that capability. I can compare that with another B group. So I can see, the impact of the feature. Is it having the impact that we thought it would? And if not, we can, either there's bugs in the feature, we can stop rolling it out and roll it back. In everything we do, because we have such large amounts of data, we do a lot of machine learning to do things like anomaly detection. Because, for example, if a customer buys like the calling service from Microsoft, and there is some problem in the PSTN network where there's no calls from the PSTN coming in to the customer. So all inbound calls are failing. As far as we are concerned, our Microsoft Cloud is concerned, if you just look at the signals, there's really no error that's happening. The error is happening on the PSTN network. But the way we detect this problem is we understand the daily usage patterns for the calls, and our anomaly detection algorithms can actually detect that, hey, typically on a Monday morning between 9 a.m. and 9:30 a.m., we see X, here's the volume of calls that we observe. But today we are at least like 1 or 2 standard deviations away. That could be a problem. So when those alerts fire, we engage our operations team, basically kind of engage the partners, figure out what's going on. So we're able to detect things very quickly. We also kind of do a lot of intelligence in the user experience. So if I'm muted and I start talking, because the audio packets are coming into the device, we can actually provide, UX notifications saying that, hey, you're muted. You may want to unmute. Or if your speaker volume is low, we can detect that and provide that information back to the user. So there's a lot of capabilities that we can actually provide back in terms of feedback back to the user. With that, I will go to, the trends in communication. Here's where, I see kind of the future kind of going, and some of this is already here, but you will see a lot more richness that's kind of happening here. One is collaborative customer care. What I mean by that is today, when you call customer support, or you have to call one of your banks for service, you have to either you send them an SMS or you call them, and then you have to wait for a while, and then you have to press 1 for this number, press 3 for this department, then you have to wait in the call. But with collaborative customer care, what we are kind of thinking is that the experience will kind of morph into providing the customer care agents with a lot of context about you and all the other agents who helped you in the past. So you can imagine a scenario where from your mobile device you're calling into State Bank of India's customer support and say just call. But we know that you're in a data connection, and we know you have an IP endpoint, so we can actually send you back we can present back, rather than you listening to all the audio announcements, we can actually present back a visual IVR, interactive voice response, where you're able to, on your mobile device, you can just touch screen, you can see, oh, 1 is for the loan department, 2 is for this department, and rather than waiting and hearing all this announcement, you just see that presented in a visual format, which you can just touch and then just get connected to those users. And there's a lot of intelligence happening with bots, where the initial customer care, the cost of a person answering a call in the US roughly is about $50 to $60 is what it costs the company when a human being answers the call. But if we can redirect, and that's a big cost for the companies when they're providing customer care. But if you can provide like an intelligent bot that can understand your language and translate that to text, and then go look up some databases and provide you the information without a human being involved, it saves the company money, and it also drives the efficiency of the customer care experience. So there's a lot of integrations happening with bots and intelligence to kind of drive that experience better. Healthcare is another big industry that's kind of taking off, and I think it started taking off probably years ago, but with COVID-19, we are seeing a huge acceleration in it. So we've seen situations where there's this ICU, they set up like a monitor with teams running on it, so it's almost like a live feed of the patient that the doctor gets to see. We can actually do kind of like, in the future, we can actually do like gesture-based detection when the patient moves, even if the user's not there, alert to the nurse or to the doctor so they can come act on it. So you don't have to wait for the patient to press a button. So there's a lot of amazing capabilities that we can provide in terms of modernizing and adding intelligence to healthcare. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of smart people who are listening here to this, discussion. You can think about scenarios how you can make it relevant for, a situation that you're in. Augmented reality, again, with remote work and remote meetings, you want to have an experience where, like we have assets within Microsoft where with HoloLens and other things, where if I'm a mechanic or if I'm an astronaut, and you guys saw the Falcon 9 launch just this past weekend, it was amazing to watch it. But if I'm an astronaut on the ISS and I put my HoloLens thing on and I'm talking to the base station in Houston or in Houghton, California, if I'm able to actually interact with them through this thing, they see what I'm seeing through my HoloLens. I can drop pictures on it, or they can annotate saying that, you have to kind of go, flip this lever, this left, and go do something else over there. It's a lot more easier if that experience can be actually, enriched through augmented reality. So there's a lot of, innovation that it continues to happen in this space. And this is the future where, people working on oil rigs or refineries or, there's a lot of factory scenarios where it can come in handy, where experts can be there without being there. Device fluidity, again, we have all these devices. You want your experience to be consistent across all your devices and make it, very natural, right? So the one thing I was telling Dr. Kalai in the beginning of the meeting here is technology is powerful when it just disappears into the background. I think Jack Dorsey, who's the founder of Twitter, said that. That's when you've actually succeeded in technology. Like when we build teams, we want teams to be a very natural interface for users to be interacting. We don't want you to think about, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? It should just fit in your natural workflow. And it should allow you to do your job the best. If your job is kind of collaborating on a project for your control systems class, that should be your focus. Excuse me. Anyway, so I think there's a lot of potential in terms of how the communications industry is transforming, and I feel fortunate to be kind of part of this. And like it's been an amazing experience, and it's incredible to watch how this industry is transforming. So with that, I'll just kind of leave this in closing. The one characteristic that I would encourage all of you to always think about when you're going through tough times, when you find problems are hard, just have grit. Grit is all about determination and persevering through hardships. When you have grit, anything becomes possible. And you guys and girls are the future of the world. So be bold, be passionate, and have grit. You'll do great. With that, I will say thank you and open it up for Q&A if you have time. I have time. So. Dr. Kalai?
Thank you. I have a question, Mahendra.
Yes, please.
So in the
You have mute your mic.
Yeah. Question, sorry. Dr. Kalai, can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Somebody
can you
had a
guys hear
question.
me now?
Yes.
Okay. So Kalai, you can ask them to request their questions in the chat also. In the meantime, I was just going to ask the tele network, the connection is like all becoming digital. So what is the big advantage of us before, like Nartel? You worked on Nartel, you mentioned. So that is going to be, that was your, great background, helped you here, I'm guessing. But my question is like becoming all digital. What is the big difference that you are seeing now than like last couple of years ago? In the tele network I'm talking about, because we are all becoming multimedia based apps and everything, right? In the phones, I'm saying.
Yeah. I think there's multiple things that happen. The world is kind of moving to a digital world, and most of the companies are in the middle of what we call digital transformation, and the reason is because the customers are expecting that. It's no longer the case where people actually want to go to a particular place to do business. Everything has to be digitized. And what we saw with COVID-19 and the last 3 months is the companies that were actually further ahead in the digital transformation journey have actually had very minimal loss of productivity in terms of, with this impact of people having to work remote. So the accelerators are certainly, first of all, broadband connectivity. Second is devices and accessible devices to everybody. And the third one is just, technologies like 5G that are at the limits of, mobile broadband. I'm not sure where we are. I think even in India, I know there are some providers that who already have launched 5G in some markets. But 5G as a technology is going to provide you, like gigabits of bandwidth at very, very low latency. That is even better than your cable providers. So you can just imagine the opportunities that kind of opens up. So if you think about things like IoT, we had like millions of users who connected to mobile networks, but you're going to have like billions of IoT endpoints, whether it's your cars, or your speakers, all these things are going to get connected. And with this connection, you can actually provide a richness in terms of insights and data that was never before possible.
Yeah. So thank you, Mahendra. One more quick question, and then I'll stop. So all these webinars and everything, we are like saving gigabytes of data, right? All this, so every currently because of COVID, everything is online.
Yeah.
So are you guys thinking or doing anything to minimize the storage or like cloud? How are we managing this mega usage of data, and how is it affecting the speed or anything related to the usage of this big blob of data that we are doing?
It's a great point. So like I said, I think the way we use the bandwidth is quite intelligent. We adapt based on available, network bandwidth. So we will, like for this video, I could start with like 2.5 megabits per second, but I can drop it down to as low as 300 kilobits per second and still provide an acceptable video. The responsiveness may not be as good. There are things that we have in the technology that does that. But it's, just to kind of, since you brought up how are we controlling this data, there's a dynamic nature that we do. There are some countries like in the EU, like back in late February or March, they required all the downstream providers like Netflix and YouTube and everybody to actually downscale their video bit rates. We did that as just a general policy. Like I think in India, we did that. In Europe, we did that because we were seeing that the networks there were suffering in terms of being able to carry the throughput. So rather than making an adapter, we actually went and did kind of static configurations so that, as those networks became a little more healthy, then we kind of increased the quality and the bit rates we used. But it's a tough problem, like I'm in kind of discussions with some consortiums in the US that for the cable operators, and they ask the exact same question. Say, hey, the question is, with like if you support 10 different video streams at the same time, smart about how much bitrate to use as opposed to congesting the pipes.
Okay. That may be your proprietary stuff. You may not be able to disclose everything, I guess.
Yeah, I cannot share everything, but we have a lot of levers available using which we can adapt.
Awesome. Thank you.
In continuation with that question, sir, actually students in India also, they are facing the same problem. See, for example, if we take online classes, one day if they continuously taking enough fight, they are losing. So it's really hard for them to handle with this. Then they have to go with other videos and they find it really. So
That's
how
right.
do we really, what are the kind of mode we have to give so that, the platform, so that the data usage will be reduced? That's a big challenge for us, which is really available of all the teaching community.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I can speak for our product. Other products have similar capabilities. Like with Teams, you can actually go as your admin, from your college, your administrators can reduce the bit rate that will be used for audio and video. That will provide some relief. But ultimately, I think there is different things like CDN and other things that you can kind of use. But in the current state home and trying to access this data through the internet, it is a tough problem. And what we are doing is we're trying to work with, there are several ISPs who have come to us and say that, hey, can you help us identify your traffic? So we want to kind of notch, students for consuming educational material. It is something that we are kind of looking at options of addressing. But I don't have immediate. It's a complicated problem because this data is traversing a variety of networks. It's not just one place where I can just tell them, hey, here's how we clear, and so the end-to-end experience is better, right? So it's something we continue to look at to make it more accessible and affordable to everybody. So.
Thank you. One more question is, actually, can you comment on the security aspect since you are talking about technology? Now
Yes.
there's vast data available, and how do you say about the security aspect? Security is really very good in clouds.
Yeah. So, I think to some degree, the security for us running this infrastructure and technology in the cloud is lower than companies running it, by their own on-prem. Because the number of people that we have focused on security, because for us, a security breach doesn't impact one tenant, it impacts millions of users. So the amount of scrutiny, security protocols, constant kind of threat validations is a lot higher than typical enterprises have when they have infrastructure run by their own IT department. All the data that we have is all encrypted in transit and at rest. So there's really no way, there's no clear text transmission of anything. So there's no kind of man-in-the-middle attacks or anything that you can do by intercepting this communication. In general, like across all the products, security is something that we take very seriously. And we have a lot of rigor in terms of encrypting our data, making sure that there is no denial of service attacks. There's a bunch of things that we do from an overall perspective that has actually kept our customer data quite secure for the number of years we've been running. So
can I ask the security question one more too? If anybody else doesn't have ask.
Yeah, please.
My question.
Please go ahead. Meanwhile, I'll ask sorry to interrupt, Lakshmi. I'll ask our Narendran, the student. I've asked him to look after the chat and ask the questions. Narendran, are you there? Narendran? Jagdish, can you ask questions?
Hello, ma'am. I have one question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, sir. It's a good presentation regarding the trends in communications. Okay.
Yeah.
And I could not get the point that collaborative customer care. Okay. Whatever the technology is playing, okay. If a person is calling to a customer and they are asking to give some options, press 1, press 2, some other options, okay. Whether is there any technology or if Microsoft is playing any role, is there any alternative way to change the customer care?
Yes. So like I said, customer care has multiple dimensions. Customer, I think I gave the State Bank of India example. You're calling State Bank of India. There's a set of customer agents that are supporting you, right? So who are behind this phone number that is there for customer support. When we talk about collaborative customer care, it is across multiple dimensions. How do these agents, like when you call them, and how can they collaborate with each other to provide you the best possible service? Today, there's no easy way where like you could call, you'll be talking to I don't know, Mr. Mahesh, who's a customer service agent who you're talking to. He may not know the answer to your question, but then he has to put you on hold, or he has to kind of message somebody offline. But with Teams, we are kind of working on a model where every conversation for customer care is kind of real-time or real-time transcribed, and it's shared into a channel where there's multiple customer agents. So, they could actually, even if one know, it is very easy for somebody else to pick up and basically help you out. There's a lot of intelligence you can build. Once you have the transcription, you can actually build intelligence on top of it very easily as well, to have these bots assist the agents. Okay, so that is the customer care side of support. User perspective, there's a lot of innovations we can do. Like this is one place where I personally believe we really haven't done much from a technology perspective in terms of transforming the experience. For example, like I think, for the past 20 years, when you call a phone number, pretty much the only improvement that's happened is instead of saying press 1 for thing, they may say it. So that's the only transformation that's happened in terms of customer experience. But instead, what if you have our app running on your mobile, and the moment you call customer care from your regular cell phone, I'm able to send back a push notification back to that app to provide you a richer interaction canvas, right? So you don't have to listen to all of this stuff. You can just go type something there, or the menu gets presented as a visual thing. So you can just touch on which one you want. So those are opportunities which I think will happen in the near future, and it's a place where I don't think there's innovation has actually happened at any serious velocity. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I got the answer, sir. Thank you, sir.
Right. Anybody else?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
No, sir, this is Jagdish. So I have one question.
Yeah.
Sir, in recent days, especially the usage of the online tools like the Microsoft Teams, yours, and WebEx, etc., we are using. It is in full demand. So you could have faced some, right, these days. So can you list some important challenge? I means biggest challenge you faced in recent days, especially in 3 months. These 3 months.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what I can talk about publicly. Sorry, that's why I'm hesitating. I'll give you an example. I think it was March. It was March, like early March. The UAE Minister of Education basically came to us and said that, hey, because of COVID-19, we have decided that, all 600,000 children, that's part of their public school system. Actually, it's 1 million children, part of the public school system, and system will be switching to a completely remote learning. So we've decided to prepone our spring break by 2 weeks, and in 3 weeks we want to go live. Okay, so this is for 1 million students in Dubai who they wanted to kind of switch over to completely online education. For us, we support millions of users. So from a cloud capacity perspective, it wasn't a huge concern. But if you look at the network, if you basically say there's 1 million who all have video on, and the teachers have video on, and our closest, the data center that we had in UAE, in Dubai, did not have enough capacity. So we had to host these students out of our data centers in Europe, which means we have to have like hundreds of gig of network capacity between Dubai and Marseille in France, which is our closest edge node to our bigger data centers that we have in Europe. And this was a time where I think we worked with like our networking team. I wasn't directly involved, but I was involved in daily updates on this because I was one of the leads kind of, driving this overall initiative. And I think the challenges that we had were, first of all, going and acquiring that much bandwidth. The ISPs did not have enough bandwidth. They had to go acquire it from somebody else. There was routers and stuff that we had to ship to Dubai to get the connectivity done. And there was no flights available. So there were like private charters that we used. When we landed, the customs office in Dubai was closed because it was a Friday. And we had to get special approval for them to clear us through customs. And connected and wired because Sunday is their first weekday there. On Sunday, we had to get everything set up. So that 2 weeks, because we did not want to disappoint the UAE ministry's commitment, we didn't want students to be coming in for the first day of school and not having. So there were several of these stories, but this is one that I just stands out to me in terms of heroics we had to kind of pull. To do something, this kind of activity, typically building out hundreds of gig of capacity between cross continent, is not an activity that happens in days. It's usually an activity that happens in sometimes months, because there's procurement, there's finance, there's somebody has to go pay the bill. We had to rush through so many things to get all of this lined up. And it was amazing to see that on day one everything just magically worked. And we got a lot of kudos from the ministry. I think either the ruler of Dubai or somebody was on one of our calls, and he was saying that this was like a great moment in Dubai's history. And Dubai was, the good news is I think Dubai is a very rich country, so their students had access to devices. They didn't have network problems in terms of broadband access to homes, so it was easier to do. But anyway, so that's just one incident that comes to my mind in terms of the last 3 months. There have been several such things, every morning on Sunday night, because Monday morning our peak starts. For a period of like about 6 weeks, our traffic was almost, it was growing significantly. I don't know what numbers we published publicly, but we grew multiple orders of magnitude. Our capacity, our usage, went up like XX. I cannot tell what X is because I don't know what we publicly shared, but it grew by huge numbers. So like at 2 a.m. in the morning, because that is like 10 a.m. in Europe and people are waking up on Monday mornings, we all used to be on a call looking at the traffic ramp up and make sure that our network is holding up, our services are holding up. Because these services, we can go add more components in Azure, but they are all getting kind of like operating at like max CPU in terms of requests per second. Everything is like running super hot, right? So we had to kind of make sure that we are on top of it. We had engineers on call. So it was quite incredible to see kind of everything come together.
Oh, okay, thank you, sir. And one more question, sir. Actually, in these, lockdown days, so as a professor of our college, we are actually supposed to use some online tools to teach and discuss with the students. And
Yes.
When we are doing like this, even though we have many features in the online and these tools, we could not able to witness or experience some real-time interaction with the student as like in our classroom session. So is there any still any technological demands or improvement will be there in your side, sir, in our communication side? Any developments
Yeah,
related to have some lively interaction like in a classroom?
Yes. That's something that we really, I cannot talk about all the investments, but you will see some announcements coming up maybe like end of next month from us. And I'm pretty sure, all these products like Zoom, although they are our biggest competitor, they have a great product. I will give them that. So does Cisco. I think all of us, like if you look at the three big players in video communications across Zoom, Microsoft, and Cisco, I think Google's doing some of it now as well with their Meet product. We realize that we need to continue to, transform our technology and experiences to mimic real life, right? Because ultimately, we are humans and we need this social connectivity. If you're just kind of talking to a monitor and that gets streamed to your students in YouTube, you're not getting this feedback back in terms of reacting. Are they paying attention? Are they happy? Are they bored? So you want that interactivity. You want to have like two-way interactions in the communication. There's a set of things that we're doing that I cannot talk about. But hopefully our goal is, I think I mentioned presentation as well. It's like, how do we kind of mimic real life experiences world? That is one of our goals, and you'll continue to see innovations and experiences come from us that address gaps. But ultimately, it is impossible to mimic real life. There is a lot of things that happen when people are remote. There is social isolation. There is fatigue. Because sitting in front of a camera for hours on end, which is my typical day, I'm on meetings from 7 a.m. because our colleagues are there. I have colleagues at night. It's like 10:45 p.m. It is very tiring because when you're at work, between meetings, you're walking around, you're talking to people. And when you're in college, between classes, you're going in your staff room, you're joking with your fellow professors. As you're walking in the corridor, you're talking to students, right? But I think as COVID-19 passes and we come up with a cure, we will end up in the middle ground. I don't think we'll be as extreme as we are today. I don't think we'll be as extreme as we were before February. I think you will start seeing an interesting blend where you can use the power of kind of online teaching to augment kind of classroom teaching. And we will make sure that there's a lot of experiences in our product that allows you to be effective in that.
Okay, sir. And also, as in your statement, you mentioned that it is really hard to mimic the real-time experiencing. So, but the people's nowadays, they are saying that usually they are experiencing the lockdown period, right? They are telling that definitely in one day, everything will be online. We do not have any, lively interaction or sitting together and everything that is not required in future. So, as the statement you said, that's mimic in a real time is like a real time is very difficult. So this will happen, sir. Actually, this one, whether this online under this online tools and online discussions and every modern tools will overtake the real-time experience in one day? Is this happen? Is this happen in future?
I think it's got potential. For a class of people, this may be the only form of communication, right? If you look at all these technology companies in the US, and I'm pretty sure in India it's happening as well, people are starting to question, do we need offices? Do we need to spend millions of dollars on buildings and real estate and people managing the space? Given that people have been productive working from home, why don't we make half the workforce required to work from home, right? Companies like Twitter have said that, you don't have to come back to work ever. You can just be a remote worker. So just like those transformations are happening at the professional level, at the working level, you can expect that even education, there will be more of these kind of online-based educational institutions that pop up because they see an opportunity here. But I don't think they'll completely displace brick and mortar, like actual physical universities. At least that's my instinct. I could be right, I could be wrong, but I think there's place for both.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
With that, Kalai, I have a couple of more questions before.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I never heard Mahendra Sekaran about all his products before we talk only normal talk. So it's like a lot of questions I have that I want to ask. Maybe after the call also I have to call him and talk to him about this. So the question to me is, Mahendra Sekaran, you mentioned that there is a possibility, a potential being, online, all the education. But, the reality in India, that, right? So there is still lots and lots of students who doesn't have enough bandwidth for even the regular phones, right? So it's like, is it real healthy to be on that direction of thinking?
No, it's not. It's not for everybody, like I said, right? I mean, there's so many. I think one of the reasons, like even in the school district I live in, they actually had a lot of debate before they went to online teaching because they wanted online learning to be inclusive. No student should be left behind. If one student does not have broadband connectivity or a device using which they can join online, cannot join, they cannot do a class, right? So it was, and I think in places like India where I think connectivity is improving, but it's still not as good as it needs to be. Devices, people need to have money to buy devices. I think it's improving, but it can still get better. It's not for everybody, but I think, like I said, I think there will be some pockets where it will survive. There may be new concepts that come up. People don't have to go 40 kilometers in a bus to go to college. They can just go 2 kilometers to a hub where they have a big monitor and have all the AV set up, and students consume a class from multiple satellite locations, right? So you could see a lot of these kind of concepts coming up. And this is just I'm just sharing my personal opinion. You could see education evolve to something like that.
Okay. So the previous question I had about the security, the Kalai was asking. So I would like to ask this. I'm not sure it's a proprietary information whether you can share or not, but I still ask the question. A lot of people complaining that Zoom we don't want to use because it's going through China, and where China has to give permission and they can see all the data. Do you have any of those things? Meaning, are you having servers in China that I have to worry about when I'm using Team?
The answer is no. The answer is no. We do not. We transit data through the most optimal paths, and we don't have any special connectivity. And I think there is, although Zoom is a competitor, I think there is some, a lot of kind of uncertainty and fear and doubt that has been instilled with a lot of the concerns around Zoom. I don't think all the concerns are really valid concerns, and I think Zoom has done a good job of addressing them. But to answer your question, we do not have
servers
any specific data centers in China that we intentionally route our traffic through so that we can make it accessible to somebody. We don't.
So the point is, you have servers everywhere. You don't have to. We don't have to worry about it. You will take care of the security. That's the point.
Yes, soft with your,
Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
Hello.
Thank you.
Sir.
yes.
Sir. Sir, one more question is posted by your Professor Jaigida Madam. Her question is, what are the qualities you look in students to get hired by Microsoft?
That's a good question. It's not a science, right? I think when a student is kind of well-rounded, a student shows commitment, a student shows that they're motivated and has some good foundational skills. Those are all things that I think not just Microsoft, I think any company, they'll be looking for the same skills, right? I mean, I think different companies will have different bars in terms of hiring. But I think it all comes down to, being committed and showing initiative in kind of doing projects that are aligned with your area of passion. So if you have students who want to become, machine learning experts, they should spend some time, whether it's internships or kind of projects in college where they are exercising that skill, learning about, all the different ML techniques and getting understanding so they can talk about it intelligently during the interviews. So it's all about, for me personally, the thing I look for is I think everybody can learn new things. I look for, people's commitment and motivation. I look for kind of self-motivated individuals who are driven by themselves and they don't need people to tell them what to do. They will what they need to do and go ask questions and be curious.
Okay, sir. Sir, and one more question.
Yeah.
Which is shared in whether Microsoft provide any internship training to students.
Yes, we do. We have several internship programs, starting from high school internships to college internships. In fact, I just had an intern join my team today. But like in terms of internships as well, if the question is specifically around India, Jagdish, I can actually send some pointers to some websites that talk about internship opportunities. And I know we have college internships because I have a team in India and we hire interns there every year. So I don't have the reference handy, but we do. Short answer is we do.
So I think if you possible, you can have that, you can share that with us, do it, sir, since we have association with you. So we can take our students to internship with Microsoft. And also my question is there any possibility for you? See, you are all, and we always say there is a gap between industry and academia. And why don't you provide some projects so that we are design thinkers, we'll work on it along with students and we'll really equip our students to your expectation, so that the training will be reduced.
Got it. I think you had two questions there. The first one, yes, absolutely. I will get you connected and I'll do my best to get, Dr. Kalai, you connected with the Microsoft team so we can figure out whether there's the opportunity for internships. The second one, it's ideally, absolutely, it'll be great if we can, if I can just get access to 50 students who I can go use to do projects, because the more people and the fresh ideas, it's only going to help us. But I think the where we run into challenges is in terms of, IP protection, who owns the rights, and all these things become complicated. But having said that, I think we do have, collaboration with certain universities where we partner closely, particularly on the research side of things. Like Microsoft has got a pretty big research division, and there they have deep partnerships with universities and colleges where they give projects and fund universities kind of go do research on specific areas. So it's not something that I am involved in personally, except for getting interns as summer. But that's something else as well, Dr. Kalai. I can actually see who the MSR contact in India, that's Microsoft Research, and see if we can connect you with them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Please connect them with me so that we are ready to collaborate, and we have really wonderful students and wonderful faculty team. Really, they are interested to do innovative projects. They'll acquire the skills and they probably do that, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
It's awesome, sir. Awesome to accept our.
No worries. I think your friend Ms. Kanagalakshmi is a very convincing person, so you should thank her for that. But it was a pleasure talking to you all.
I thank Karalakshmi also. Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
guys. It's amazing. You guys did awesome. Mahendra, very nice to hear all that. I'm sure many of the students, they need to go back and revisit the YouTube to understand all of it, because there's a lot of information compressed in one small talk. I'm sure maybe multiple talks might have to be done on each one of the topics. Maybe later on, when you go to Coimbatore or something, you can do one of those when you go in person. I'm saying it may
When
not be
you're
tomorrow.
coming here,
I'm just
please do call me.
that's what I'm
You can
saying.
come
Like,
and straight away you can interact with our students.
yeah,
That's my
exactly.
request.
Yeah. Thank you, Mahendra. Thank you,
All right,
everybody.
it was a pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Have a
you.
Just a
Bye-bye.
minute.
Thank you.
Take care.
Just a minute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Geeta
sure.
Ramani, can you do the thanks? You can just say a vote of thanks, madam. Geeta Ramani?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So good morning, all present here. I would like to share my heartfelt thanks to the resource person, Mahendra Sekaran, Director of PM at Microsoft Washington, for sharing his valuable time with us to enrich our knowledge in the field of education. Next, I would like to thank our management, Chairman Dr. S. Subramaniam sir, and Technical Director Dr. S. Nalin Vimal Kumar sir, for to conduct the wonderful events and motivating us continuously to do such events. I also extend my thanks to our principal, Dr. S. Sindur Pandian sir, for his continuous guidance and support in all our endeavors. I express my heartiest thanks to our K. Kalachelvi madam for organizing an excellent webinar in the latest trends and supporting and motivating us in all our endeavors. Last but not least, I would like to thank heads, deans of various departments of SNS College of Technology, faculty from various departments of SNS institutions, and all the participants in and around our India and student friends and our ECE team for their support. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate